It turns out this center scroll button is very important. Hard to see, but the button is mashed down into the remote. And when this button is broken, well, it's kind of like the TV is broken. Going to take a couple of days to get a new remote, so I'm going to see what actually broke, and can I possibly patch it up. To get the remote apart, I have to separate the halves at the seam. There are plastic clips all around the perimeter of the remote. Once I get the seam started separating, multiple wedges will help keep it apart. It seems best to separate the two long sides, then get the front to separate. The battery terminals slide into grooves in the back plastic, and that holds the PCB in place. Need to pull straight up on the circuit board to get it to pull loose. I don't want to bend the battery terminals, as that will make it harder to put back together. The shaft of the scroll knob is broken off. The little encoder looks to be okay. Very hard to see, but the shaft that broke off must have fallen out. But looks like a small hex shaft socket. Well, let me see if an Allen wrench will fit it. I believe this wrench is 1.6 millimeters. I'm going to go look in my Allen wrench drawer and see if I have one this size that isn't part of a kit. I don't really want to cut this one. I'll double check the size. So this is either 1.6 millimeters or 1/16 of an inch. I would guess either would work here. The scroll knob is a soft rubber sleeve over a hard plastic shaft. So I had a couple of these in my drawer, so I don't mind cutting the end off of one of them. I want the hex shaft to stick out about 1/8 of an inch from the end of the plastic shaft. The plastic shaft is hollow, so I'm going to cut off a piece of the Allen wrench, a little shorter than the entire length of the plastic shaft. I'm going to put the plastic shaft into a vise to hold it. And I'm going to heat the metal hex shaft and push it into the end of the plastic shaft. I have the soldering iron set to 800 degrees Fahrenheit. I've tried to line the hex shaft up in the middle of the plastic shaft. And I'm putting a bit of pressure on the hex shaft with the soldering iron. Takes a bit, but then it will melt right through the end of the plastic shaft. I'm a bit off center, but it's not too bad. That is going to fit. I've got the hex shaft pushed a little too far in. I'll push it out just a bit more. There, that is better. Now the flat end of the plastic shaft is away from the encoder maybe 0.05 inches. That should work fine. I have the plastic shaft back in the vise, this time with the opened end up. I'm going to mix up a small amount of 5-minute epoxy. I'll cut a long fine point on the end of a swab to make myself an applicator. I'll put the epoxy in a tiny bit at a time and try to get the air bubbles out. The epoxy is thick, so I may have to poke at it some to get the air out. With this epoxy, I have maybe 2 minutes to work with it at this temperature. I'm going to try and fill up the shaft. That way there will be no chance of the metal hex shaft moving around. I think that has got it. I'll let it set for 20 to 30 minutes and then see how it turned out. It's been about 25 minutes and the epoxy isn't tacky anymore, so should be good to try it out. Rubber sleeve just pushes onto the plastic shaft. Added hex shaft fits right into the encoder. I can feel it clicking, so I know it's turning the encoder. Though right offhand, I can't think of ever using the scroll function of the button. But it seems to be working. There is a slot in the top plastic that the end of the shaft opposite the encoder fits into. I'll make sure it's in the correct position, making sure the scroll and the button click are working. Feels good, so I think I'm ready to put the remote back together. The only thing to look out for installing the back cover is to make sure the battery terminals are sliding into the slots they are supposed to go in. Then it just snaps back together. feels successful, I'll get the batteries back in and give it a try. That did fix the remote. I should go ahead and order a spare to have on hand, but I really don't see that metal hex shaft ever breaking. Now, it might wear out the encoder socket, but I don't think I've ever used that function, so I don't have to wait a couple of days to watch TV. Really, that could be good or bad. Thank you for watching.